Okay, so I've been asked to do an instructional video to put in a replacement copper core inside a brazing gun. This is the part of the gun that runs right the way through the entire main section of the gun, and basically allows the current to travel from the electromagnet. There's an electromagnetic coil in here, and down all the way to where the pin is. And what's happened in this particular instance is that the small screw here has threaded and isn't staying in anymore in the gun that needs repairing. So unfortunately, we're gonna have to change out this entire piece. Now, as usual, I'm going to do this raw, just starting with a gun. I don't know what I'm going to find inside here. This is a higher gun, but yeah, okay. Basically, what we're going to do first of all is just take away. Oops, again, I'm really good at getting the wrong size parts here. Just going to take it apart, and hopefully we won't slide off screen or anything like that. I'll put something down here so I know how far I can go before you guys can't see anything. Just going to put some of these lids here so that I can keep my screws. I'm just taking out these retaining screws that hold this front section in. Not something we do very often here. Let's change these out, but I guess there's a first for everything. Normally those copper cores, when they go in there, they're in there for life, you know. So I'm just taking out all these screws, making sure that I'm not losing all the bits. Hopefully, this is good. Hopefully let's pull away straight away. That's nice and clean in there. Okay. Now, on the gun that needs repairing, this screw here. Okay, this is the one that you can see on your copper core, so that gives you kind of some perspective of where this copper core sits inside the brazing gun. In this case, whilst I'm in here, I'm going to take this out. Hopefully if I can get a tool the right size to fit that. It's not right. There you are, hiding from me again. All these things, they all look the same. Okay, so I'm just going to unscrew mine. Appreciate on yours, your screw may be already out. Let's have something just to fit that out with. It's quite an involved job, this, but hopefully the time elapsed on this video will give you some idea of how long it's going to take you to change it all out. I'm going to take this part off as well. Just to give you a better visual of what's going on. Some of these parts, they're working under quite a lot of heat, so occasionally need a little bit of encouragement to try and get them freed up. But I'm going to take this off as well. Now, in your inside your gun, you're going to have a wrench in there that is going to allow you to undo that. But in fact, now you know what? I don't need to take that off. I don't need to take that. I can stay on. Next thing we're going to do is take these screws out in the back of the gun here. Be really careful with these, because some of these screws that you're undoing here, they're not kind of normal service point areas. So just be a little careful when you're undoing the threads. The socket head cap screws, I find, are much more robust, whereas these button head ones, they're much easier to strip, and it tends to be the hexagon in them that strips. So just make sure you've got the right size key. You know, again, I'm pretty sure there should be one of those in your toolkit. I think we've catered for every eventuality in that, every emergency eventuality in that little kit. Although it's not ideal, it's pretty much everything there. So this thing just slides completely away. Okay, and that's your adjustment section. And then what we're going to do here, we need to take out this whole section which is attached to this part here. So you're going to need to undo this locking screw here, and then this whole thing. Just hold on to this because it's kind of spring loaded. So this whole thing, yours may have 3 screws in it. This one only has 2. This is a much older gun, one of the original guns. Okay, so this is probably the first time any of this has been taken apart. So kind of a bit of a history lesson for me. Okay, take away that spring. Now this thing now, it should slide all the way out, and what you're going to get here is exposure to this ribbon. Now this ribbon goes around the coil and then down through here and into the inside of here, and it connects to where the contacts move backwards and forwards. And what you need to do here to get this out is, watch these washers that are going to start coming off from the front here. Just make sure you put that back in when you go back in. Okay, see this, I'm talking about this over here. I just realised that that's off camera, but that sits in the front of the gun. We'll get to that go when we put it all back together, but we just need to undo this screw here. Okay, this is going to be quite tight because, like I said before, some of this stuff, this was okay, some of this stuff, it's the first time it's ever been taken apart. Okay, and just there's a little washer with that as well, so you need to keep that to one side, and that should free that up. And then this thing should just slide all the way out. Okay, we can get rid of this, where that goes. Now your ejector rod at this point, because you've taken out this screw, should just completely slide out the back. We'll just take a little bit of time just to examine this. It should be nice and clean. This is the most important part. Just don't waggle this from side to side. Just give it a pull. Make sure that it's in there nice and firm, and it's fairly straight. You see, as I'm rotating that, there's not much movement in this, so this is good to go, and the spring's in good condition. So that's cool. We can reuse that. Now, this copper shaft, as well as being held in place by the little screw that you took out of here, all really that screw does is stop the shaft from rotating when it's in position. And it just holds this in, so the screw just sits down in this little recess here, and it acts like a little locking pin to stop this from firing out the back of the gun. That's all that really does. The copper core is actually held in place by this is one of the things that most people miss. They try and get these out, and they're hammering away, bashing away, and they miss this screw here. I'm not talking about this screw, okay? I'm talking about this brass one here. Okay, so this needs to come out, and that brass screw goes all the way down through the whole mechanism and presses against the copper. Okay, and that's going to pull out of there. Okay, and that's your coil. You move that out of the way, and you'll see there's usually a little mark on there where that's been located. And that's your old component that you're going to either repair. Now you can repair these by just opening out the size of this hole here and rethreading it for a bigger screw, and provided the head of the screw will fit down inside here, you might need to do a bit of machine work, then you'll have a functioning spare part, if you like. That's one of the things that we do if we're trying to keep a high unit out in the field. That's, if I was in an emergency, that's probably what I would do. But for the sake of the cost, I guess it's easy for you to change out a new part. Okay, so we get rid of that. Okay, now this is our new part. I'm just going to take out this, again, get the right Allen key. Shows you how unprepared I am to do this video. I'm just doing it off the cuff here, guys. Remember that one take rule? Yeah, I'm just keeping it real. That's all I'm doing. So I don't want to lose that screw. And at this point, you can put your if you want, you can put your ejector rod down inside there, just to make sure that it's working okay. And there's sometimes when these are new, a little bit of the thread material drops through to the inside, so it's just always good just to make sure that that's clear. Okay, but when you go to put this in, you can put it through either way. Doesn't make any difference. I'm going to put mine in through the back and just make sure that that hole is at the front end. Okay, and you're going to slide that in. Hopefully that should go all the way in. And then you're going to, some of these shafts, they have a hole on both sides. Okay, it doesn't matter which side you put it on. But if you line up that hole there, now normally if you had a nipple to put on there, just get one of our new contact nipples. If your centre core comes with a contact nipple, it might be good to put this in here with the nipple on, because it kind of helps you, and I'll explain why it helps you in a minute. But if this contact section's on already, just get off some of that thread material there, then I'm just going to tighten this up. Probably not going to be able to tighten this all the way up without holding it somewhere, so I'll just all I'm doing over here is just holding this this core in a vise, so I can screw that contact nipple down fully. Normally when it's located inside your gun, it's locked up, so it's much easier to tighten this. But when you've got it in your hand and you try to tighten it, it's kind of sliding around in my fingers like this. So I think the ones that when we send these out as replacement parts, they come with this attached and a screw. Pretty sure of that. So yeah, with this in mind, you would have to slide this in from this end, and it kind of helps you, because that then bottoms out there. And hopefully what should happen is, when it bottoms out, is that hole should sit exactly centrally in there. Now if it doesn't matter. You just, let's say it's a little bit far in or a little bit far out. The hole is the most important part, so it doesn't really matter if when you tighten it up, it won't be that big. But let's say there was a gap here. Okay, as I say, it won't be that big. It may be maybe 1 millimeter at the most, but getting this screw in properly is the most important thing. So at this point, I would fit your ejector rod. Okay, so I would do it in this order. Okay, make sure your nipple's in, slide it in this way, fit your ejector rod, and with your ejector rod, you want to line up that flat section of your ejector rod. Remember this part when we pulled it out, you've got this flat section, because the screw's going to go down onto that flat section. Okay, so I'm just going to push that in there. Now this might seem a bit tricky, a bit of a trickier way to do things, rather than locking it up here, but I'm going to explain to you why in a sec. So I've just lined up that flat surface, and I'm just going to drop that screw there. And now you may or may not have seen the video where I explain how to change out an ejector rod assembly. This is kind of tricky sometimes, getting this to start. There's not much to go with thread wise, but you need to be really careful here, as you know, and when you tighten this up, it doesn't need to be super tight. Okay, it just needs to be pinched up. You don't need to be really cranking it, because all it's doing is stopping this from coming out. So and once you're happy that that's right for you, then what should happen is that your spring your check rod should be moving free, and your spring should be able to push that back without any kind of resistance. Now if there is resistance, if you tighten up this screw too tight, for example, or if you tighten it up and it locks the spring, or it locks the ejector rod in position, then all you need to do is take out this screw and file it down. Just make it a little bit short. Just take a small file and just file it, or a piece of emery cloth, and just rub it on the emery cloth. Some of these things require a little bit of what we call fettling, to get them back together, especially at this stage, when most of these parts are designed to be in there for the entire life of the piece of equipment. so it might need a little bit of fettling just to get the dimensions right. But yeah, ideally what you want is for that to be finger tight down, and your ejector rod. Okay, now I'm babbling aimlessly, I appreciate that, but the next step here then is to tighten up this screw, and again, when you tighten that, you want to make sure that it's actually doing something. So it should pinch down against the copper. I tend to do those up quite tight, but what will happen then is if you take out this screw, okay, I'm not suggesting that you do this, this is just a bit of a test to see if this is actually bitten down onto the copper core. If you take out this screw, your ejector rod, sorry, not your ejector rod, but your copper core, okay, is actually being now physically fixed in there. Now this is actually the ideal time to fit your ejector rod properly, because you've got, you can it's not going to slide out this end. Okay, so it makes it much easier to line up that flat section and hold it, and then properly locate this screw. I just wanted you to make sure that it was possible for you to put that screw in whilst the the copper core was being held in the correct location. Okay, so now it's all been secured in, and you can make sure that that's down in there properly. Okay, now this screw is really important because not only does it secure this copper core, but it also provides a really good true electrical continuity between the end of your coil, which is this part, your electromagnet, and the part that takes the current down to where your brazing pin is. Okay, so that's all together, everyone's happy, and then what you need to do here is fit it all back together. And one thing that I like to check here is if you just slide this part over and slide it all the way down, you should get an exposed section of copper here. Okay, and because this is all the way down inside here, that exposed section of copper sticking out of there, irrespective of where this is, because it's always going to be bottomed out on there, that exposed section of copper should be 1.5 millimeters long. Okay, give or take 0.1. Okay, now I'm pretty good at measuring things with my eye when I've got my glasses on, but that is looks to me to be about 1.4. Okay, which I'm happy with. Okay, that means it's going to give me an arc length of 1.4 millimeters, which is within the acceptable parameters, if you like. Now, if this is not the case, then we need to you need to get in touch with us, and we'll explain to you further how to go about sorting this out, or indeed send it back to us. Remember that these things, when they're put together, they're calibrated, and the copper core that you're having to change out isn't really what we call a service part, but there is a way to make it work, and it's pretty straightforward with a little bit of that word fettling that I'm going to use. Okay, a little bit of machining. Okay, so we're time to put this back into your gun. So you're going to locate that back down inside. Now there is a bearing in the front of your gun here. Sometimes these pop out, but maybe in this instance it won't. But it's come a bit forward. It doesn't matter, but it kind of floats inside there. What you want to do is make sure that I'll show you the inside of this. Okay, this if the handle is pointing downwards, this ribbon is supposed to come up and out of here, from your perspective, anti-clockwise. I beg your pardon, clockwise, in this direction. Okay, and what you're going to do is you slide this back in. Okay, into that bearing, and you expose the point that you're going to screw it in. Try and get that out of there. This is the point where you need really good kind of fingers, really good manual dexterity, I guess. And what I like to do here is just slide that on there, down inside there, just to give the whole thing a bit of support while I'm doing this. Okay, I'm just going to twist it that way so you can hopefully see a bit better what I'm doing, so you're not just getting shot on my fingers. But this shaft is down inside this brass part now, so if I press down here, it's kind of holding it true for me on the bench. Then you take your other brass screw with your flat washer. Just going to start that off a little bit. Tighten that up. I like to get this terminal here as flush to the brass bush as I can. Okay. I certainly don't want any of it sticking past, so I don't want the angle of that terminal to stick past here. So if it's a little bit off center, it doesn't matter. But you don't want it to stick past this black insulator. Okay, so just put that back there. And as you tighten it up, it probably will twist a bit, but it doesn't really. As long as you get, okay, that's good enough. And then this wants to be twisted all the way around to the very bottom. Okay, so that coil inside is as tight as possible. And then you can push it all the way through. Slide your bearing back in this way. Okay, which in this case is decided it doesn't want to go back in. There you go, and it goes back in. Okay, and then don't forget to put this washer back on. All right. Now, I would probably put this part back in now. So yours will have a cutout on the bottom, so you'll see which way it goes round. It will only go in one way. In this instance, I'm just going to line up the screw holes and put these securing screws back in. So it was the button head screws, and like that. Oh, I'm starting to lose my little washer. Let's just get rid of that for the time being. Fasten that down. Okay. And the next one goes in here. You get the idea, don't you, at this stage. You could probably put this back doing the front end first, but I like to put this bit back on so I know that the whole thing is being supported inside at both ends. Okay, so it's being supported on this bearing here, and it's being supported on the shaft inside there. Okay, I'll just check, make sure it all rocks backwards and forwards. You should hear a clunk as it comes to this end, and that should still be sticking out, that 1.5. Because there's no spring on it, it's wobbling around. But what we're going to do here is we're going to put this washer back on. Okay, and then you're going to put this back on. Okay, and then you're going to just push the whole thing down on its back end and slide this retainer back on. Now, this is supposed to be, sorry, I didn't appreciate you couldn't see that there. We're going to slide this retainer back on. Now this retainer here is supposed to sit 10mm onto this shaft, but a good way of getting it exactly right is to slide this on as well. Okay, so if I slide that all the way on and make sure that that's all the way down, if I push the gun all the way down onto that, that means that that's fully engaged into there, and I can tighten the screws up on my my spring retaining bush. Okay, so that when I release this, although this part probably could still come off, that's my 10mm, and that's giving me my return pressure. Okay, because the hole inside here is 10mm deep. Okay, so that's just a quick way of doing it. If you wanted to, you could just secure the gun at this end and slide it on and tighten it up, but that's just a kind of bit of a cheat, really. Okay, so make sure these are good and tight, because they're going to hold the whole return spring mechanism. And again, it should be really free-flowing at this stage, really nice and easy. The bearing's in there, it's all being held parallel. Now's a good time to put this back on. You could check your you know, do your normal sort of ejector rod checks and make sure that the pin of the ejector rod is coming out the end of here as I'm pushing this button at the back. Okay. Now's a good time to put this on. Now I would recommend that you put this screw here, which is the retaining screw for your pin holder, on the very bottom. Okay, on the very bottom, so on the same kind of axis as the where the trigger is. Okay, so as best you can line that up. I can see that that's pretty well lined up, and then you can go ahead and just tighten these up. Okay, and this will secure this. This is the insulation bush. Okay, we call this a heat shield slash insulation bush. And I appreciate it's a big long name, but it does two separate things. It insulates the pin holder and the pin from the rest of the gun, and it also provides a heat shield, which catches the I guess the blast from when the fuse wire inside here breaks. Okay, so that's all in position. That's good and set up, and then you can go ahead and slide this on. And again, what you want to do is put it on with this hole here. On the same axis as the trigger, so that when it actually goes on, you can access the hole here to undo your pin holder. Okay, and then you've got to go ahead, reattach your retaining screws for this front. I forget all the names of these. It's crazy, you know. I should have them written down. That's one thing. I don't mind doing these one-take videos, because it's kind of realistic, you know. Because it proves to you when I keep picking up the wrong tools that I am just doing it. You know, my toolbox is over there, and I'm just doing it out of memory, really. But one of the things that I struggle with is the names of all the parts, and certainly the part numbers. I used to be really good at remembering part numbers to things, but these days I guess I've just got more important things to think about. And then you put your final screws. These screws are really important as well, to make sure that they're in. Again, you don't need to over tighten this stuff, just make sure that it's all the way down. Okay, and then you've got your kind of checks, like just to make sure that everything in here is central. Okay, your pin holder needs to be in exactly the same center as your ferrule holder. Now we started making them now with these new ferrule holders, which are located on an O-ring as opposed to screws that go around here, so they're kind of self-centering. So you put your pin and put your ferrule in, and even if it's off center, once you go to set up, the whole thing pulls itself true without affecting your pin. So that's it, you're good to go. Change out your ejector rod on. What you should be left with, no extra spare screws. If you've got extra spare screws, then you need to go back through it all again and figure out what went wrong, except for your old ejector rod and your old screw. Now if there's nothing wrong with this screw, keep it, because sometimes you're in the field and you drop them. I mean, you look at it, it's tiny. I can hardly hold it in my fingers. It's crazy how small that is. I apologise for making that so small. And then this, I'll leave it up to you what you want to do. I don't think it's going to be worth much scrap value, but might make a really good spare part, in case you have a catastrophic meltdown. Now that, I appreciate that I've been gassing aimlessly, but that video has taken 28 minutes and 58 seconds, so that's longer than I thought. But yeah, so there you go. All done. One take, keeping it real. Take it easy.